Have you ever been in a situation like this? Or this? Or when you see a mage you just pray not to challenge you, thinking that you don't have any chance? Then you are in the right place. In this video I'm gonna show you how to beat a mage as a warlock. First, let's talk about which warlock spec you should choose against a mage. Let me tell you what you definitely should not choose, and that is the affliction spec. Even if you are Samaya or the Faker's God, if you are fighting against a really good mage, you don't really have any chance, because affliction has lack of defenses and lack of burst damage. So you should either play Destruction or Demorok. With Destruction, you need to have a good RNG, or at least not the worst one, to have a chance against a mage, a really good mage. But if you wanna be more consistent, then you should pick Demo. Here is my talent. For Glyph, the most important one is the Glyph of Fellhunter. I highly recommend using the Glyph of Metamorphosis and the Glyph of Souling for extra defense. But you can switch around the last two how you like. For example, you can use Glyph of Decay, Glyph of Corruption, or even Glyph of Shadow Flame. Minor Glyph does not matter. You need 4% hit rating, around 130 spell penetration, and you need a ton of resilience and spell power. For secondary stat, you should aim for haste. As for gems, you can increase your resilience as high as you can, so you're gonna be more tankier. If you're human, you should definitely do that. So in the red and yellow sockets, you can use the given resilience gems. And in the blue sockets, you can use the spell penetration one till you get the cap. For meta gem, I highly recommend using the spell power and reduced stun duration one. If you don't have the hit cap from the gear, you can either use the hit plus spell penetration gem, or you can use the suppression talent, which is located in the first row in the affliction talent. But if you're not a human, you can choose an alternative build. Since Medallion gives you 153 resilience, by exchange for that you lose 1 trinket socket, so basically you lose offensive stats like spell power, haste, procs, and so on. So you can increase that back with your gems. In that case, the red and yellow socket's gonna be different, but the blue and meta gonna be the same. I'm gonna show you my starter and my full best in slot gear, so you can see what enchants and gear I'm using.
All the way to bottom, but I've never seen it all. It can all toss your way, don't get attached to the current spits, no flurries. The rhythm won't worry. If you fall behind, I'll be humming till you hurry. With the horn, beat the dog. Can't take a loss with the boss and the weak with the horn, beat the dog. Can't take a loss with the boss and the weak all the way to bottom, but I've never seen it all. It can all toss your way, don't get attached. With the horn, beat the dog. Can't take a loss with the boss and the weak
One last thing going to be the trinkets. If you have access, you should use Bubble. If you don't worry, you can use any Battle Master, or Skeleton Key, or any other defensive trinkets. It doesn't really matter what professions you're using. I either recommend using jewel crafting, plus blacksmith, or engineering and tailoring, but basically you can use whatever you want. As for ratio, if you are full best in slot, you should be human, cause for duels, Bubble and Abacus with 1.3k plus, potentially 1.4k plus resilience, is just uncomparable with anything else. But if you have lower gear, then I would say Orc can be your choice. Since Orc has already stun reduction passive, which you can scale up with your meta gem and metamorphosis, and your pet has plus 5% more damage. Moreover, you can use your active ratio to increase your spell power too. You can try Gnome as well. Against mages it can be helpful since you can kite better by breaking the Nova, remove the slow effect on you. My only issue with that is the Escape Artist CD is way too long. First, let's talk about your major offensive spells. Your main damage going to be the Corruption, the Curses, the Immolate, and the Pet Attack. I want to mention the Devour Magic here too, since the goal is going to be to purge down the mage. So we need to scale up these. With this spec, unfortunately, you cannot scale up the Immolate unless you wanna use the Glyph of Immolate, but luckily we can scale up really hard the Corruption spell, which going to have huge damage and range. So we can scale up the Corruption with Improved Corruption, Empowered Corruption, Demonic Knowledge, and Demonic Pestilence. With Amplify Curse, you can spam your curses as much as you want, since it's not going to be a full global CD. I could mention here the Metamorphosis too, but I think against mages, it's better if you use it as a defensive spell. And lastly, your draining spells, like Drain Life, Drain Mana, and Drain Soul. With this spec, you can cast Drain Life for more damage and for more healing. Or you can try to the mage with Drain Mana too. If the mage health is below 25%, you can use your Drain Soul to finish him. If the mage that you cast, or if he is out of CDs, you can start casting Shadow Bolt and Incernate as well. For Mage Pet and or Mage Mirror, you can use your Immolation Aura and Shadow Cleave to AoE it down. And don't forget to use Spell Lock on cast. What are your defensive spells and talents? Let's start with the Glyph of Fellhunter. Every time when you use Devour Magic, it heals you and your pet approximately 1k per Devour Magic. Your Fell Armor is also healing you. You have improved health on talent, which is going to increase your health on healing done, and your defensive trinkets can heal you as well. If you have Bubble, you can use it for yourself or for your pet. So you're constantly healing in the fight. Your main defensive spell going to be Curse of Tongues, because it slows the target cast time and increases his global CD. When you're about to press Hellstone, Bubble, or First Aid, you should switch your armor to Demon Armor. It will increase your healing taken. Otherwise, you can use Fair Armor because it's gonna increase your damage. If you were playing either Distraction or Affliction Lock, you will realize without a good RNG, or even with that, Mage can unalive your pet really fast, especially when he pops his CDs like Icy Veins. So my goal was to scale up the pet defenses as much as I can. And with this talent, oh boy, your pet is literally immortal. Let's see how I could manage to do that. Against mages, obviously you need to play with Fellhunter, and with the Master of Damages talent, you and your pet gain 10% reduce all spell damage taken. But we are not stopping here. With Demonic Residence, your pet gains another 50% reduced spell damage taken. And if you use Glyph of Soaring too, which is extra 5% reduced spell damage taken, you end up with extra 30% reduced spell damage taken. Basically, like your pet has constant shield wall on itself. But even if the mage managed to unalive your pet, with the Nemesis talent, you have 2.1 minute fair domination and metamorphosis instead of 3 minutes. And on top of that, if you use metamorphosis, Mage cannot cast Pori on you since you turn into a demon. Although Mage can deep you, which with this build is reduced by a lot, and CS you too. But if the mage already used CS, you can resummon your pet as many times as you want in the fight. But also, you should heal your pet with Health Funnel. With the improved Health Funnel talent, it gains another 30% reduced spell damage taken. What and when to use your spell luck? You should either see as the Frostbolt or the Polymorph. The interesting part is the when question. If the mage pop his CDs, you should focus on to CS the frostbolt. You can tank the first body because you can either CS the second one or you can CS the frostbolt while he's trying to unalive your pet. Also keep in mind that when you use your form, he can't body you. So even if he fakes you, you can just press your form to deny his pet go. When should you use your Devour Magic on you, on your pet, or on the enemy? Most of the times you wanna purge down the mage, remove his buffs, which he either ignore or he needs to spam mana to rebuff. Or you can remove his ice barrier, fire ward, or mana shield, which is really good for you. Most of the time you want that. But in certain situations, you can use your Devour Magic on your pet to remove the slow effect or break out from the Nova when your demonic empowerment is on CD. Unless you are in big trouble, you don't need to use Devour Magic on yourself. Big trouble means that you already use your port and he popped every CD to finish you or your pet, or your Phantom and form is on CD, or he is about to finish your second pet. These only happens if you make a lot of mistakes. First, let's talk about what is the mage goal against the Warlock. The mage goal is to go max range, kite your cast, and finish your pet while he's CCing you with Deep Freeze, CS, and Poly. So as a lock, you either need to close the gap and burst down the mage. This can be good if you are D-lock, or you can take advantage from that kiting and slowly burning the mage health and mana down. With this build, basically you don't need to cast anything except half honor. Of course, if you put Immolate, cast Fear, cast Drain Life or any other spell, that would be better for sure. But it's not as important as putting the 2 dot up, healing your pet, and slowly win the duel. So, how to position yourself? First, I will give you an idea how the duel should look like. Of course, these are going to be ideal situations. I will represent these with dots. The purple one going to be the Warlock, the red is the Mage, the blue is the pet, and final green is your port. In this picture, you can see the starting position. What is important here is that you should put your port to max range, if you can, and put your pet close to you, but not that close to get inside double CZ like double Nova. When the duel is starting, most likely the mage is going to start kiting you and your pet. What you need to do is start attacking with your pet, dot him up, and start purging him down. As a warlock, you can either close the gap or start pressuring the mage, or you can stay max range. What you need to look out here as well, that you should not overrange your port. If that happens, make sure you either repositioning your port or kite a bit back. You can always welcome to reposition your port, but you should only do that when the mage has either no CDs or he already used his blink. Otherwise he can do a counter go, cause now you can't kite his burst. So with that, you can kite the mage forever. And if you use offensive blink, you can do a counter go with your form and force his ice block or even win the duel. The ideal position would be that you are max range from your port and from the mage as well, and you can heal your pet with half funnel while your dots are on the mage. But what if the mage, instead of kiting you, he starts pressuring you? Then you need to take the original mage roll, so you need to kite him the end of the duel area. If you reach that distance, you can just port and start kiting to the other side of the duel area. When you are fighting against the mage, you should watch out for these CDs. Let's start with the offensive ones. There are three of them: the Icy Winds, the Mirror Image, and the Water Elemental. The most important here is going to be the Icy Winds. If you see that, you need to counter it by CSing the mage, using your form and start pressuring back, or using your port and start kiting. Usually when the icy wind is rolling, Mage will use his pet and mirror image as well, where you should focus to AoE those down with your dots as well. Next, let's continue with the CC ones. Although defeat is important too, but the game changer is going to be the counter spell. You should either force him to use by interrupting your fire spells like Immolate, because after that you can heal your pet, refresh your dots, and basically win the duel. Or you should start fake casting till he uses it. If he uses his CS at the right time, this situation can happen to you as well. And lastly, Mage have 2 Ice Block and 1 Trinket, so you can interrupt or block your go 3 times easily. So try not to play that aggressive against mages. With Cold Snap, he can refresh every of his frost spells, so for example he can refresh the Icy Veins, Path, and so on. I put the blink into this section as well, because even if you fade the mage out, he can just blink as an interrupt since he can overrange your cast. How to win? I'm going to show you a few gameplays where I'm gonna tell you what and why it's happening. But before I do that, let me give you some of the key points of the fight. First, you always start with putting up your Corruption and Curse of Tongues and make your pet attack the mage. Then, start perching down the mage and you start the kite. Force his CS with Immolate cast. If he brings out of the range, you start kiting the opposite way. If he CS the Immolate, now you are free to cast Fear, Kite, or have Funnel to protect your pet. Use your port when he pop his CDs and start kiting. If the mage burned his HP and mana below 50%, make sure you to save your pet CS for Evo, only if you can. If you can't, you can try to fathom your pet for a second Devour plus CS combo. If you use Mirror Image and his pet, you can use your form to AoE those down with Immolation Aura. And now, let's review the clips. In this clip, you can see us start with the Curse of Tongues to slow his cast down and increase his global CD. And then I put the Corruption up and start pet attacking him. After that, I start casting the Immolate to force his CS, which he didn't use, so I could manage to put that on him as well. I CS his body, and cause of that he used Icy Veins deep on me and start shooting my pet. Cause of my form, I could block his body cast. Here he used his blink to avoid my Immolate cast. I could even manage to fake him, so my pet was more than fine. And this is the classic Ward of Pressure situation, what I showed you in the presentation. Since he wasted his Icy Veins, I'm winning right now. So I can pressure the mage as much as I can. I continue healing my pet, which you should do in the entire duel. I could even dot his pet up and CS his Frostbolt cast. And then we find ourselves in the ideal position. Mage is max range, my pet is on him, and I'm in the range with my port as well. In this position, I didn't want to overextend. So I just reapplied my dots and let me poly, cause I know without CDs he cannot really hurt my pet. Meanwhile I'm in the poly, I even purge the mage down, since there is no actual danger. Obviously I was only purging the mage down so far in the entire duel. After the polys, I used the classic rotation against mages and trying to bait his CS. Since he was below 25% health, I started casting Drain Soul to finish him, but because of that, he used his Ice Block. From here, you cannot really lose the duel. He used his Cold Snap and he summoned his second pet, what I could dot up easily. Since he didn't use Icy Veins, I could let him poly me once again. Even if he would use Icy Veins, I could just Trinket Fathom and CS that. He had to shoot rank from Frostbolt on me to cover his second poly. But before he landed his second poly, in the gap I put the Curse of Tongues up on him. He used his second Icy Veins, but it was a bit too late. I could manage to devour the deep from myself and finish him with the coil. I'm gonna show you a few shorter clips to give you more example of this. In this clip, as you can see, I started with the classic opener. I could manage to CS the poly, but cause of that, he popped his Icy Veins and started bursting me with the Deep Freeze. Once I saw that, after the deep, I just insta-ported. He tried to chase me by blinking in, but that was his crucial mistake, cause I had the form and I could punish his aggressive play. Although I was a bit too late for charging him at first, but eventually I could manage to close the gap and burst him and his pets down. In this clip, you will see when and where you should use the Devour Magic on yourself, instead of purging the mage down. In this position, I don't have CS for poly, and he deep me, so I can't even use my form to block that. He used Icy Veins. So I can either try to purge his Icy Veins down, or dispel myself from poly. Even if I would fail the dispel on myself, I could still use the trinket and use bubble on my pet, like I did in this situation. But since I could dispel myself, moreover fake his gust, my pet was fine. But you should never use port like that. And lastly, I wanna show you the classic cat and mouse game. What can happen if the mage use every of his offensive CDs? So the mage trying to get distance, and you don't want to let him to do that. But one thing is really important, even though you are closing the gap, do not stay too close to mage. You always want to use your port to do so if mage is out of his CDs, so try not to overrange your port. As you can see, I was standing between my port and the mage, so the mage has no chance to recover. How not to lose a duel. This is gonna be a summary section where we're gonna watch one of the worst duel what I've done against a mage. And I'm gonna tell you what mistake did I do and how you can avoid doing that. The start was classic opener with 2 dots and pet attack, but I made a huge mistake. I see as the poly too early. Since my port wasn't in the best position, I wouldn't have a chance kiting him if he used his CDs. And that's what he exactly did. He used his pet to Nova Deep me, pop his ice veins, and start shooting me with frostbolts. I made another mistake. Instead of I counter it with my form to force his blink, I overranged my port and he even got a lucky frostbite proc. Like in this position, if I was using my form to force his blink, I could still save this duel. Because Mage can blink in 4 directions. The first one is the forward, where I am currently, so I can just run to the opposite side till the icy veins fall off. Or he could blink backwards or right, where 3 is, so I can use my port to kite, or he could blink to my ports, where I could burst him down with my immolation aura or force his ice block and waste his icy veins. I eventually used my form, but it was a bit too late. I could manage to AoE down his pets and heal myself up, but he even faked my CS. I used my courier to get more health back, and thankfully he used his iceball just a bit too late. I dotted up his pet and I was ready to bro this duel back. But, can you spot my other mistake? Yes, I am on my port, so I can't even use it for kite. This is the worst mistake what you can do. I tried to port his frostbolt in desperation, but I obviously failed. And then I started kiting the mage. He used Cold Snap and he did a strange evo, what I could manage to CS. It was either a bait or an add-on bug, but I was back in the duel because of it. But then I made another crucial mistake. I knew he had one more icy veins, and instead of me just slowing the duel down, I started pressuring the mage for no reason when I was out of my CDs. I could maybe save this duel as well if I would just steal kiting, but try to pour back, which you should never ever do, and fake the mage. But even if I could fake him, he could have just bring my cast and finish the duel. What he actually did. But with all these mistakes, it was still a relative close duel. Alright, I wanna thank you all for watching, and I hope I will see you in the next video as well. Bye!